People thought Daniel Brooks was cruel when he divorced his wife. They whispered in court corridors, they judged him in silence. They assumed there must be another woman, but none of them knew the truth. If you're listening, subscribe. Because this is not a story about divorce, this is a story about rare humanity. Daniel and Emily Brooks had been married for 12 years. 12 years of quiet mornings, shared responsibilities, and 2 children who still believed their parents were forever, Lucas, 9, and Noah, 6. There were no bruises in their marriage, no shouting, no police calls, just something worse: distance. Emily had slowly disappeared into routine. Daniel noticed it before anyone else did. She smiled less. She spoke less. She lived carefully. One night, Daniel watched her sit at the dining table staring at nothing while the children slept. That's when he understood something terrifying. She wasn't unhappy. She was enduring. And endurance kills love silently. If you're listening, subscribe. Some pain doesn't scream, it waits. Daniel didn't confront her, he didn't accuse her, he didn't demand answers, instead he went quiet. 3 months later, Emily received divorce papers. No warning, no fight, no drama. Just a single sentence written in Daniel's handwriting: "I don't want to be the reason you forget who you were." Emily read it 3 times. Then she broke down, not because he was leaving, but because he was right. In court, Daniel stood straight. When the judge asked if reconciliation was possible, Daniel replied calmly, "She deserves a life, not a compromise." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge paused. Emily didn't object. She didn't beg, she signed. The children went home with their mother. Daniel didn't fight for custody, not because he didn't love them, but because he believed stability mattered more than ego. If you're listening, subscribe. Not all goodbyes are selfish. Months passed. Daniel lived alone. Emily rebuilt slowly. Then Daniel remarried. Her name was Sophia Brooks, and this is where everyone thought they understood the story. Sophia was beautiful, confident, ambitious. She spoke about new beginnings and fresh starts. She never mentioned Emily, never mentioned the children unless it was convenient. Daniel noticed, but he didn't react. Sophia loved talking about property, investments, future security. She laughed when she said, "Your past is your past, I'm your future." Daniel smiled back, silently, because some tests are best given without warning. If you're listening, subscribe. The kindest people often watch the longest. The children visited Daniel on weekends. Sophia tolerated them. That was the word. She didn't hit them. She didn't shout. She just made them feel unnecessary. Emily noticed it immediately. Lucas once whispered, "Mom, she doesn't like us." Emily said nothing. She hugged them tighter. Daniel saw the change too, but he stayed quiet because New Year was coming, and Daniel had already planned something no one expected. On December 28th, invitations went out. A New Year's Eve party at Daniel's house. Friends, family, business partners, and one name on the list shocked everyone: Emily Brooks. Sophia saw the invitation and laughed. "Your ex," she said. "That's strange," Daniel replied calmly. "She's family." Sophia didn't argue, she smiled, but something dark flickered behind her eyes. Emily hesitated before accepting. Why would her ex-husband invite her? Why now? Why New Year? She almost declined, but Lucas begged. "Please, Mom, just this once." Emily agreed. If you're listening, subscribe. This is the moment before everything changes. On December 31st, the house glowed with lights, music, laughter, champagne. Sophia looked radiant. She believed this night was about celebration. Daniel stood quietly watching everyone, waiting, because New Year was not about fireworks for him. It was about truth. At 11:58 p.m., Daniel took the microphone. The room quieted. Sophia smiled proudly, assuming a toast. Daniel didn't look at her. He looked at Emily, then at his children, then at everyone else. And he said, "Tonight, I want to correct a misunderstanding." The room leaned in. This divorce was never about failure. Sophia's smile stiffened. Daniel continued. It was about respect. The clock ticked closer to midnight. And Daniel added the sentence that changed everything. "And before this year ends, I want to give back what never stopped belonging to her." Sophia's glass froze midair. Emily's heart raced. The children looked confused. Lawyers stepped forward. Documents appeared. The countdown began. 10:09, Sophia whispered, "Daniel, what is this?" Daniel didn't answer. 3:2, the papers were signed. Half of Daniel's entire property legally transferred to Emily. 1, fireworks exploded outside. And inside, Sophia realized she had married the wrong man. If you're listening, subscribe. Because the next part reveals how greed exposes itself and how New Year nights remember everything. The fireworks were still exploding in the sky when Sophia Brooks finally understood that this night was not about celebration. It was about exposure. Her glass trembled slightly in her hand as applause faded into confused murmurs. She forced a laugh, sharp, rehearsed, desperate. "This is a joke, right?" she said, turning to Daniel. "You didn't tell me about any property transfer." Daniel looked at her calmly. "No," he replied. "I didn't." That single sentence felt heavier than the fireworks outside. If you're listening, subscribe, because sometimes silence is the loudest answer. Sophia tried again, lowering her voice. "We'll talk later." "Not here," Daniel shook his head gently. "Later is how things get hidden." People nearby pretended not to listen, but everyone was listening. Emily still hadn't moved. She stood near the wall, her mind racing. Half the property. She hadn't asked for this, she hadn't expected this. She hadn't even known Daniel was planning anything. Her hands shook not from greed, but from disbelief. Lucas tugged at her coat. "Mom, what's happening?" Emily knelt and hugged him tightly. "Everything's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure yet. Sophia noticed the children then, and her expression changed. Not concern, annoyance. She leaned toward Daniel and hissed, "You're humiliating me in front of them." Daniel met her eyes for the first time that night. "No," he said quietly, "I'm protecting them." That word, protecting, cut deeper than any insult. If you're listening, subscribe. This is where masks begin to slip. Sophia straightened her posture and turned toward the guests. "Everyone, please," she said with a practiced smile. "This is just a misunderstanding." Daniel gets emotional on big days. Daniel didn't interrupt. He simply let her speak. Because liars always reveal themselves when they think they're still in control. One of Daniel's friends spoke up. "Emotional about giving away half his wealth?" Sophia laughed nervously. "He feels guilty about the divorce, that's all." Emily flinched. Daniel didn't. "That's not true," he said calmly. "I don't feel guilty." The room went quiet again. Sophia's eyes widened. "Then why?" she snapped. "Why would you do this to me?" Daniel took a breath. "Because," he said, "kindness doesn't end when a marriage does." Sophia scoffed. "So I'm being punished for marrying you?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, you're being revealed. If you're listening, subscribe. Some people destroy themselves trying to explain too much." Sophia's tone hardened. "You never told me you were still attached to her," Daniel replied without hesitation. "Respect is not attachment." The lawyer cleared his throat. "The transfer is complete and irreversible." Sophia's face lost color. Irreversible. She turned sharply toward Emily. "Did you plan this?" Emily's voice trembled, but it was honest. "No." Sophia stared at her, searching for guilt, for triumph, anything. She found none. That angered her more than anything else. "You're enjoying this," Sophia accused. Emily shook her head. "I'm surviving it." Daniel stepped between them. "That's enough." Sophia laughed bitterly. "You think you're some hero?" Daniel looked at the children. "I think children shouldn't feel unwanted in their father's home." The words landed like broken glass. Lucas looked up, confused. Noah clutched Emily's hand tighter. Sophia's lips parted, but no words came out, because she knew. She had felt it every weekend, every time the children visited. She had tolerated them, not loved them. If you're listening, subscribe. Children always know where they don't belong. Sophia's voice finally broke. "So what now? You give away half your life and expect me to smile?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Gasps rippled through the room. Sophia stared at him like she'd never truly seen him before. "You planned this," she whispered. Daniel didn't deny it. "For how long?" she asked. "For as long as it took you to show me who you really are," he replied. That was the moment Sophia lost control. She slammed her glass onto the table. "You used me," Daniel answered calmly. "No. I observed you." Sophia's eyes filled, not with tears but rage. "You'll regret this," she spat. Daniel smiled sadly. "I already lived with regret. I won't live with injustice." The music restarted awkwardly. Guests began to whisper. Emily felt dizzy. This wasn't revenge. This was something else, something colder, cleaner, more final. As the party slowly resumed, Sophia stood alone near the window. No one approached her, because power looks different when money stops obeying you. Emily prepared to leave. Daniel walked over. "Thank you for coming." Emily searched his face. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel replied softly, because gifts lose meaning when they're negotiated. Emily nodded. The children hugged their father. Sophia watched. And for the first time, she felt fear, not of losing money, but of being seen clearly. If you're listening, subscribe. Because part 3 reveals Sophia's real intentions, her plan to regain control, and why Daniel is still 2 steps ahead. Sophia didn't cry after the party. That was the first thing Daniel noticed. A woman who truly feels hurt cries even if she hides it. Sophia didn't hide anything. She calculated, if you're listening, subscribe. Because the most dangerous anger is the one that stays calm. The next morning, Daniel woke to a silent house and a message on his phone. We need to talk, now. He found Sophia in the kitchen, dressed like she was going to a meeting, not a marriage. Her smile was back, soft, controlled. I didn't sleep, she said. Daniel poured coffee without looking impressed. Neither did I. Sophia leaned forward. Last night was embarrassing. Daniel nodded. Truth often is. Sophia's eyes narrowed. I've been thinking. Daniel finally met her gaze. That's what worries me. Sophia forced a small laugh. Stop acting like I'm your enemy. Daniel didn't reply, so she changed tactics. You still love her, Sophia said, voice sweeter. That's the only reason you'd give her half. Daniel's expression stayed calm. Wrong, Sophia tilted her head. Then what is it? Daniel's voice was quiet. Respect and responsibility. Sophia scoffed. Responsibility ended when you divorced her. Daniel set his cup down. No, responsibility ends when kids grow up loved. Until then, it's permanent. Sophia's smile twitched. If you're listening, subscribe. This is the moment you see what matters more to someone, love or control. Sophia stood and walked closer, voice low. Daniel, you can undo this. Daniel shook his head. No. Then I'll make Emily undo it, Sophia said, as if she were describing a simple errand. Daniel's eyes hardened. Try. Sophia's face flashed with irritation. Don't challenge me. Daniel leaned in slightly. I'm not challenging you, I'm warning you. Sophia stepped back, then softened again. Fine. Let's talk like adults. She pulled out her phone and opened a note. Option 1, she said, we sign a new agreement. You compensate me fairly, I stay quiet. Daniel stared at her. Quiet about what? Sophia smiled. About how unstable Emily is, about how she manipulated you. Daniel's jaw tightened. Option 2, Sophia continued, you refuse and I go public. I'll tell people you gave your ex-wife property because you're still obsessed. I'll make you look weak. Daniel took a long breath. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he simply said, you're forgetting something. Sophia blinked. What? I don't care what you say, Daniel replied. I care what my children feel. Sophia's voice sharpened. Then you should think about what they'll feel when their father is humiliated. Daniel's eyes narrowed. I'd rather be humiliated than dishonest. Sophia slammed her phone down. You're impossible, Daniel nodded. That's why you're angry. If you're listening, subscribe. When manipulation fails, the real personality arrives. Later that day, Sophia drove to Emily's house, not alone. She brought someone, Daniel's mother. Grace Brooks. Emily opened the door and froze. Grace stood calmly, tired eyes watching everything. Sophia spoke first. Hi, Emily, we need to talk. Emily's hands tightened on the doorframe. About what? Sophia smiled brightly. About the transfer, it's unfair. Grace didn't smile. Emily let them in for one reason only. The children were in the other room and she didn't want shouting on the porch. Sophia sat on the couch like she owned it. Grace remained standing. Sophia began politely. Emily, Daniel made a mistake. Emily's voice was steady. It wasn't a mistake, it was legal. Sophia's smile tightened. Legal doesn't mean right. Grace finally spoke. Careful. Sophia glanced at her, annoyed. I'm just being honest. Emily folded her arms. What do you want? Sophia leaned forward. Return it. Emily blinked. No. Sophia's voice turned colder. Then at least sign over part of it to me. I'm his wife now. Emily's eyes hardened. And I'm his children's mother. Sophia laughed. That doesn't make you special. Grace's voice cut through the room. It does. Sophia's head snapped toward her. Excuse me. Grace stepped closer. I watched you for months. You never asked about the boys. You never learned their bedtime stories. You never offered them warmth. You offered Daniel demands. Sophia's cheeks flushed. I'm not here for your judgment. Grace looked at her like a judge anyway. You're here because you thought marriage meant ownership. Sophia stood up abruptly. Fine, if you won't return it, I'll make Daniel regret giving it. Emily's stomach tightened. How? Sophia's smile returned slow and sharp. I know things. Grace's eyes narrowed. What things? Sophia tapped her phone. Screenshots, messages, old photos. I can make Emily look like she cheated. I can destroy her reputation. Emily felt her breath catch. Grace didn't flinch. You're bluffing. Sophia leaned in. Am I? If you're listening, subscribe. Threats aren't loud when they're real, they're casual. That night, Emily called Daniel. Her voice trembled slightly. Sophia came here. Daniel's face went still. What did she do? She threatened me, Emily whispered. And she brought your mother. Daniel's jaw clenched. I'm coming. Emily stopped him. Don't. She wants you to react. Daniel went quiet. Then he asked softly, did she mention the children? Emily hesitated. She called them a burden. Daniel closed his eyes. That word hit him harder than any insult. Because it confirmed what he feared. Sophia didn't want a family. She wanted a trophy. And trophies don't come with responsibilities. If you're listening, subscribe. This is where Daniel's kindness becomes dangerous for the wrong person. The next morning, Sophia made her move. She posted online a long, emotional story with soft lighting and sad music. She framed herself as the victim. She implied Daniel was still in love with his ex-wife. She hinted at betrayal. She wrote, some women never let go even after divorce. Comments flooded in. People love judging strangers. Sophia smiled as her post gained attention. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already predicted this. He had already prepared something that would not break her with violence but with truth. And the next part begins with a knock at Sophia's door. A lawyer, a document, and a sentence that would make her blood run cold. If you're listening, subscribe, because part 4 is where Sophia realizes she isn't controlling the story. She's walking into Daniel's trap. The knock on Sophia Brooks' door came at 8:17 am, not loud, not rushed, precise. Sophia had barely slept. Her phone lay beside her, glowing with notifications, likes, comments, strangers defending her without knowing anything. She smiled at the screen, satisfied. Control felt good again. She opened the door expecting drama. Instead, she found a man in a gray suit holding a leather folder. Miss Brooks? He asked calmly. Yes, she replied, lifting her chin. I'm serving you on behalf of Daniel Brooks. Her smile stiffened. If you're listening, subscribe. This is the moment confidence collides with paperwork. Sophia stepped aside, letting him in, already rehearsing her response. This is unnecessary, she said lightly. We can talk like adults. The man didn't sit. He opened the folder and handed her a document, cease and desist, defamation notice, temporary injunction. Sophia scanned the first page and laughed. This won't hold, she said. It's just a story. The lawyer nodded. Stories become problems when they contain false statements presented as fact. Sophia's laugh faded. You claimed emotional manipulation, he continued. You implied infidelity, you suggested instability. He tapped the page, all verifiably false. Sophia crossed her arms. People can say what they want online. Not when it damages reputations, he replied. And not when there's documentation. Documentation, that word again. If you're listening, subscribe. Truth doesn't shout, it files. Sophia flipped pages faster now, screenshots, timestamps, witness statements, her post, her messages. Her visit to Emily's house, her throat tightened. This is intimidation, she snapped. No, the lawyer said gently, this is containment. He slid one last page forward, financial disclosure request. Sophia's eyes widened. Why would he need that? She asked sharply. The lawyer met her gaze. Because your online statements suggest motive. Motive invites discovery. Discovery. Sophia swallowed. Any further posts, he added, will escalate this to damages. Substantial damages? He closed the folder. You have 24 hours to remove all defamatory content and issue a public retraction. Sophia stood frozen as he left. The door clicked shut. And for the first time since the party, Sophia felt real fear. If you're listening, subscribe. Manipulators panic when their words gain consequences. Across town, Daniel Brooks sat quietly in his office reviewing notes. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't angry, he was focused. Grace Brooks, his mother, stood near the window. She won't stop, Grace said calmly. Daniel nodded. I know. She doesn't see children, Grace continued. She sees leverage, Daniel closed the file. Then we remove leverage. At Emily's house, the children return from school to find boxes on the kitchen table. What's this? Lucas asked. Emily knelt. Something your father wants you to have. Inside were documents, not legal, not complicated, trust statements. College funds, health coverage guarantees, no conditions, no deadlines, no leverage. Emily's hands shook as she read. Daniel had quietly placed the children's future beyond anyone's reach, including his own. If you're listening, subscribe. Real protection doesn't negotiate. Sophia tried damage control. She deleted the post, issued a vague apology, claimed misunderstanding. But screenshots live longer than apologies. Comments turned. Questions appeared. Why was she so angry about children who weren't hers? Why mention property at all? Why threaten someone who stayed silent? Sophia felt the ground shift. She drove to Daniel's house unannounced. He didn't let her in. They spoke through the door. You planned this, she accused, voice shaking. You set me up. Daniel's reply was calm. I gave you space to be yourself. Sophia laughed bitterly. You never loved me. Daniel paused. I respected you, he said, until you tried to hurt my children. Silence. Sophia whispered, so that's it? Daniel nodded. That's it. If you're listening, subscribe. Some lines end conversations forever. That night, Sophia called a friend, someone with connections. I need this to disappear, she said. He's ruining me. The friend sighed. You ruined yourself? Sophia hung up. She sat alone in a house that suddenly felt empty, not of people, but of control. Meanwhile, Daniel met with his lawyer again. Next step? The lawyer asked. Daniel thought of the children, Emily. His mother, transparency, he said. The lawyer nodded. Then we proceed. The next morning, a quiet announcement appeared, no drama, no accusations. Daniel Brooks establishes independent family trust for children of his first marriage. No mention of Sophia, no insults, just facts. Sophia read it 3 times. She realized then that Daniel wasn't fighting her. He was outgrowing her. If you're listening, subscribe. The most painful defeat is being irrelevant. Sophia made one last attempt. She messaged Emily, we should talk woman to woman. Emily stared at the screen. Then she deleted the message without replying, because peace doesn't argue, it closes doors. Sophia stood at her window that night, watching lights in other houses, families laughing, children running, warmth she hadn't earned. She whispered to herself, this isn't over. But somewhere deep down, she knew it was. Because Daniel had one move left, and it wasn't about money. It was about truth in public. If you're listening, subscribe. Part 5 is where Daniel speaks openly, Sophia's mask collapses completely, and the world finally understands what kind of man he really is. Sophia didn't expect Daniel to speak publicly. That was her second mistake. She believed silence meant weakness. She believed good people stayed quiet. She believed kindness had limits. If you're listening, subscribe. Because this is where quiet people finally speak and everything changes. The announcement appeared on a Monday morning. No dramatic headline, no accusations, no interviews. Just a single, carefully written public statement released through Daniel's lawyer and shared by several community pages. It read, this is not a response to rumors. It is a clarification of values. My divorce was based on mutual respect. My financial decisions are based on responsibility toward my children and their mother. No individual has been harmed, punished, or deprived. My priority remains the safety, dignity, and stability of my family. That was it. No mention of Sophia, no defense, no justification. And yet, everyone understood. If you're listening, subscribe. Sometimes truth doesn't accuse, it contrasts. The reaction was immediate. Comments poured in. Finally, a decent man. This is how co-parenting should look. Why is the second wife so angry if no one attacked her? Sophia refreshed her phone obsessively. Every scroll felt like a slap. She tried responding once, typing furiously, deleting, typing again. Nothing she wrote sounded reasonable anymore, because Daniel hadn't attacked her. He had made her anger look unnecessary. That afternoon, Daniel received a call from an old friend. I saw the statement, the friend said. You sure you want to stay this calm? Daniel smiled softly. Calm is the point. If you're listening, subscribe. Anger feeds conflict. Calm starves it. Sophia, however, couldn't stay calm. She booked an interview with a small online channel, one that thrived on drama. She arrived dressed carefully, voice trembling just enough to sound emotional. "I was blindsided," she said on camera. "No woman deserves to be treated like this." The interviewer nodded sympathetically. Sophia continued, "I sacrificed everything, and suddenly I'm portrayed as greedy." She paused for effect. "I just want fairness." But the comment section told a different story. People asked questions she couldn't answer. Why did you threaten the children's mother? Why demand property meant for kids? Why attack instead of leave? The interview backfired, clips spread, not with sympathy, with skepticism. If you're listening, subscribe. Public spaces reveal more than private rooms. That evening, Daniel's mother, Grace, visited him. "You didn't mention her once," Grace observed. Daniel nodded. "I didn't need to," Grace smiled. "Your father would be proud." Daniel exhaled slowly. He hadn't done this to win, he'd done it to end something toxic. At Emily's house, the children watched quietly as their mother read messages from relatives and neighbors, supportive, kind, respectful. Lucas asked, "Mom, are we in trouble?" Emily knelt and hugged him. "No, sweetheart. We're safe." That word, safe, felt new. Sophia, meanwhile, felt anything but safe. Friends stopped answering calls, invitations slowed. Whispers followed her, not because Daniel destroyed her reputation, but because she exposed it herself. She drove to Daniel's office one last time. Security didn't let her in. She waited in the lobby, pacing. When Daniel finally appeared, she rushed toward him. "You think you won," she snapped. Daniel looked at her, not with anger, not with pity, with clarity. "This was never a competition," he said. "It was a choice." Sophia laughed bitterly. "You chose her over me." Daniel shook his head. "I chose values over convenience." Sophia's voice cracked. "And what am I supposed to do now?" Daniel answered honestly. "Reflect." She stared at him like he'd spoken another language. "If you wanted power," he continued, "you chose the wrong man. If you're listening, subscribe. Some people mistake boundaries for betrayal." Sophia stormed out. She didn't look back. That night, Daniel sat alone and thought about the past year, the divorce, the remarriage, the New Year decision. He didn't regret the property. He didn't regret the party. He only regretted one thing, waiting too long to trust his instincts. At the same time, Sophia packed her bags, not because she was forced, because staying meant facing herself. She moved out quietly, no announcement, no farewell, just absence. The house felt lighter without her, but the story wasn't over. Because kindness often invites one last test. The next morning, Daniel received a legal notice. Sophia was contesting the divorce settlement, claiming emotional damage, financial manipulation, betrayal. Daniel read it once, then handed it to his lawyer. "Proceed," he said calmly, because now the truth would enter a courtroom where emotions matter less than records. And Daniel had records. If you're listening, subscribe. Part 6 is where the legal battle begins. Sophia's claims collapse, and the children's future is finally secured beyond all doubt. The courtroom smelled like old paper and quiet tension. Daniel Brooks arrived early, not because he was nervous, but because people who respect consequences don't rush. Sophia arrived 10 minutes late. She wore confidence like armor. Perfect hair, sharp heels, a practiced sadness in her eyes. If you're listening, subscribe. Courtrooms don't care about performance, only proof. The judge reviewed the filings without emotion. Sophia's lawyer stood first. "My client suffered emotional distress," he said smoothly. "She was publicly humiliated, financially destabilized, manipulated." Sophia lowered her eyes at the word humiliated. Daniel didn't react. Because the truth didn't need defense yet. Sophia's lawyer continued, "Mr. Brooks transferred assets to his ex-wife during marriage without consent. This constitutes betrayal of marital trust." The room went still. Emily wasn't present. Daniel had insisted she stay away. This wasn't her burden anymore. If you're listening, subscribe. The kindest people protect others from unnecessary pain. Daniel's lawyer stood. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "we will demonstrate that no assets were transferred unlawfully, that no marital funds were misused, and that the petitioner's claims rely on perception, not fact." She placed a folder on the bench. "Furthermore, we will show a pattern of coercion, threats, and attempted defamation by the petitioner." Sophia's jaw tightened. The judge nodded. "Proceed." The first witness was a financial auditor. Charts appeared, timelines. Clear lines drawn long before Sophia entered Daniel's life. The assets transferred, the auditor explained, were solely Mr. Brooks' premarital property, protected by law. The trust for the children was established independently. Sophia's lawyer objected, overruled. Next came messages. Sophia's messages demanding silence, threatening exposure, insisting on money, each one read aloud. Sophia's face paled. If you're listening, subscribe. Written words remember better than people do. Then came the moment Sophia didn't expect. Daniel's mother, Grace Brooks, was called. She stood slowly, dignified, unshaken. I watched my son give his marriage dignity, Grace said. I watched him give his children safety. And I watched this woman, she glanced at Sophia without malice, confuse entitlement with love. Sophia's lawyer stood abruptly. Objection, character attack. The judge raised a hand. Overruled, context matters. Grace continued, my son didn't punish anyone, he refused to reward cruelty. Silence followed, heavy. Then the judge asked Sophia if she wished to speak. She stood, this was her moment. I loved him, she said, voice trembling. I was blindsided, I felt replaced. Daniel looked at her, not with anger, with finality. Sophia's lawyer placed a hand on her arm, signaling restraint, but it was too late. And yes, Sophia added sharply, I demanded compensation because I deserved it. That word echoed, deserved. If you're listening, subscribe. That's the word that sinks ships. The judge leaned forward. On what basis did you believe you were entitled to assets designated for children? Sophia hesitated. I was his wife, she replied. The judge nodded slowly. Marriage is partnership, not ownership. Sophia sat down, her case was collapsing in real time. Daniel was asked one question. Why did you do it? The judge asked. Daniel stood. I didn't give away my property, he said calmly. I invested it in peace. The judge paused, then closed the file. I have heard enough, she said. The ruling came swiftly. Sophia's petition was denied, costs assigned to her, restraining orders upheld. The children's trust declared untouchable. Sophia didn't cry, she stared straight ahead, because loss looks different when it's deserved. If you're listening, subscribe. Justice doesn't shout, it concludes. Outside the courthouse, Daniel exhaled deeply. Grace placed a hand on his shoulder. You did right, Daniel nodded. I did necessary. That night, Daniel visited Emily not to discuss court, not to celebrate, just to check in. The children ran to him. Lucas hugged him tight. Dad, are we okay? Daniel knelt. Yes, forever. Emily watched, eyes wet. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel replied softly, for trusting me. Elsewhere, Sophia packed again. This time there was no anger, only exhaustion. She realized something too late. Daniel hadn't defeated her, he had simply refused to enable her. And that refusal changed everything. But one chapter remained. One decision Daniel hadn't shared yet. Because kindness, when done right, doesn't end with winning. It ends with closure. If you're listening, subscribe. Part 7 final is where Daniel makes his last move, Sophia disappears from the story, and the true meaning of a good divorce finally becomes clear. The house felt different after the court decision. Not louder, not happier, just lighter. As if something heavy had finally been removed from the air. Daniel Brooks stood alone in the living room, looking at the empty space where Sophia's belongings once were. No anger rose in him, no victory either, only clarity. If you're listening, subscribe, because real endings are quiet. Sophia left the city 2 days later. No farewell post, no dramatic goodbye, no accusations, just silence. People assumed Daniel had destroyed her. They were wrong. Sophia had destroyed herself the moment she chose greed over humanity. Daniel didn't follow her story after that. Because good people don't need to watch those who walk away from their own choices. At Emily's house, life slowly returned to rhythm. School mornings, homework fights, late dinners, normal. Lucas once asked, Mom, are you and Dad getting back together now? Emily smiled gently and shook her head. No, sweetheart, Noah looked confused. But Dad is nice. Emily hugged them both. He always was. And that was the truth most people never understood. Daniel had never been cruel, he had never been careless. He had simply refused to turn love into control. If you're listening, subscribe. This story is about a man who knew when to let go and how. One evening, Daniel invited Emily and the children for dinner, not as husband and wife, not as broken people, as parents. Grace Brooks sat at the head of the table watching her grandchildren laugh. This, she said quietly, is what family looks like. Emily met Daniel's eyes across the table. There was no regret there, only respect. After dinner, Daniel handed Emily a folder. She frowned. "What's this?" Daniel replied calmly, "The final documents." Emily's heart tightened. "More legal things?" Daniel shook his head. "No, closure." Inside the folder was a letter. Written by Daniel, not typed, handwritten. Emily read slowly. "You were never my mistake. You were my responsibility, my respect, and the mother of my children. I didn't give you half my property because of guilt. I gave it because dignity doesn't expire with divorce. I hope this chapter ends without bitterness. You deserve peace." Emily's eyes filled, not with pain, with relief. She closed the folder and whispered, "Thank you." Daniel nodded. "For trusting me with our children?" If you're listening, subscribe. Some apologies are silent and stronger for it. That night, Daniel walked alone under New Year lights still hanging in the streets. People laughed. Cars passed. Life moved forward. He didn't feel lonely. He felt aligned. Weeks later, a small article appeared in a local paper. No drama, no names dragged, just a headline. "A rare divorce shows what respect looks like." It spoke about co-parenting, about choosing dignity over ego, about protecting children instead of fighting ex-partners. Daniel never shared it. Emily clipped it and saved it quietly. Because not everything needs applause. One afternoon, Grace asked Daniel, "Do you regret remarrying?" Daniel thought for a moment. "No," he said honestly. "I regret ignoring signs." Grace smiled. "Wisdom often arrives after tuition is paid." Daniel laughed softly. Sophia's name never came up again because villains don't stay relevant when their power disappears. Months later, on another New Year's Eve, Daniel stood on his balcony. Fireworks lit the sky again, but this time there was no announcement, no documents, no audience, just a man who had learned something important. That love is not possession, that marriage is not ownership. That divorce doesn't have to mean destruction. Daniel whispered to himself, "I did the right thing." And for the first time in a long time, he believed it. If you're listening, subscribe. Because the world needs more stories where kindness wins quietly, and good people don't need revenge to sleep peacefully.